All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we are here to do a full breakdown of the Washington Commanders 2024 Day 3 and final day of mandatory mini camps. Of course, I'm going to provide y'all clips from the practice, and we're breaking down and analyzing everything possible. I'm giving y'all a big-time injury update for several players, and of course, we're going to go position group by position group with the breakdowns as well. We're going to talk about some coaches. We're going to talk about a lot of things outside of even the Commanders themselves that kind of interest the Commanders in a certain way. You'll see some of that at the beginning of the video and also at the end of the video as well. I mean, we even cover special teams, but just know some of the most notable topics. First of all, Jayden Daniels, 2 touchdown passes to Brian Robinson. That chemistry is increasing with him, with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson from what we're seeing. Jamin Davis is a full-time edge rusher now, as it seems. We're going to talk about that. Dan Quinn loves 3 players specifically. He really went out of his way to point out 3 players specifically. We're gonna break down who those players are and why. We also have some underrated standouts, some guys on the outside looking in, trying to make this 53-man roster that are making noise right now in these offseason practices, that are increasing their chances of actually somehow making the roster, even though they were a far reach if you asked me a month ago, but now starting to sound fairly realistic for a couple of guys. And this is also, just to let you know, the last practice until July 29th. So this is it. After we just wrapped up mandatory minicamps. Now I know I'm recording this late. It's 2:57 a.m. right now. I was just really busy all day, but June 13th, as in Thursday, was the final Commanders practice that we will get in any way, shape, or form until July 29th when training camp starts. So we have a 6-week break, but again, like I've told y'all, I got y'all covered with daily content no matter what. But before we dive into all of this, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Again, there are no Commanders practices, probably no major Commanders news coming out until July 29th. Now, y'all know once that kicks back up, I got y'all covered every single day that we have access to what's going on in practice. We get to see what's happening. We know what's happening. And even up to that point, again, I got y'all covered, your one-stop shop for everything Commanders. I have so many video ideas, so many different windows and tabs of things that I want to talk about that my computer is moving slower because of it. So I got to get these videos out to y'all. So trust me, I have enough material, enough talking points, enough opinions, facts, statistics, all kinds of random things, updates, information. I got a Rico report loading, all kinds of things like that. Enough to at least put out a video a day for these next 6 weeks until we get to that training camp practice. So make sure you stay tuned without wasting more of y'all time. Let's go ahead and dive into this video. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so before we dive into practice, the Washington Commanders joint practice with the New York Jets is officially set for Thursday, April 8th at 10:15 a.m. I cannot wait for that. The practice is also going to be open to the public, of course, even better. And I completely agree with George Carmi when he brings up this point on Twitter. He tweeted, "I'm really looking forward to the joint practices. Although the team has looked good in 7-on-7s, that's not real ball. Last year against the Ravens, the team started to show some of its flaws. You'll learn the most from outside competition." I completely agree. The preseason games help a lot as well, but the starters don't play much in those games. As we go through the preseason games, the starters start to play a little bit more and more. But at the end of the day, I feel like these joint practices probably even tell us more than a lot of these preseason games. And as many joint practices that you can get in as possible before you get to the regular season, an even bigger advantage. Again, we have 3 preseason games, but we also have joint practices with 2 of those teams that we go against in the preseason. I cannot wait for those. It's essentially like having 5 scrimmages if you include the preseason. Super excited. We have joint practice with the Jets leading up to theirs. Again, that has been confirmed to be on August 8th, 10:15 a.m. And then we also have a joint practice with the Dolphins leading up to that preseason game. And then the third and final preseason game, we don't have a joint practice leading up to it, but it will be nationally televised for everybody to watch, the Drake May versus Jayden Daniels quarterback off. So that's going to still be fun in that way. But man, I'm super excited about some joint practices. Also, the Washington Commanders team owner Josh Harris was at the team's final minicamp practice earlier today. I mean, I guess technically yesterday, because right now it's Friday, June 14th, 3:01 a.m. But y'all get my point. The third day of mandatory mini camps for the Washington Commanders 2024 offseason. You had Josh Harris there. You also had Mark Iron and Adam Peters, as you can see on the screen right now. And Martin Mayhew was there as well, even though I know a lot of y'all may not necessarily be the biggest fan of Martin Mayhew, but I still want to let you know that he was there. But then Mark Iron himself even tweeted after the final mandatory minicamp practice. He tweeted, quote, "Great day at Commanders practice, capped off by a fantastic family picnic for all the players and staff and their families. Energy out there is incredible. Everyone in the whole organization is fired up." That is the exact tweet from Mark Iron, and that is such a great thing to do, man. Shouts out to Josh Harris for just going out of his way to make everybody as happy. There's no way we are ranked dead last or even bottom half of the NFL by the time we get around to the next offseason. We do these top free agency landing spots rankings that is voted on by the players and things like that. There's just no way we go dead last again, man. Just to go out of your way to give a picnic, not only for all of the players and even the staff, coaches, front office, but their families can come as well. I mean, that's so like just out of the ordinary. That is something that Josh Harris is not required to do at all. I don't even believe Dan Snyder ever did something like that once. I'm not sure if anybody else in the NFL is doing that right now after a mandatory mini camp practice. This wasn't even training camp. This wasn't after a regular season practice, a postseason practice. Mandatory mini camps before we go into 6-week break. Josh Harris just doing great things one step at a time. I'm pretty sure Mark Iron has something to deal with it as well. And I just love the energy we have in the Commanders organization right now. We have a few more quotes about the new energy in this organization compared to the previous one, as well as we get further in this video. Trust me, you're going to want to hear those. But then you also have this cool relationship with Jayden Daniels and Sam Hartman, where every day leading into mandatory minicamps, there was always a new funny clip of them walking out to the practice field together. Sam Hartman made a Dune reference yesterday, but today Jayden Daniels and Sam Hartman literally look like best friends out there in this clip right here.
Sam, both of y'all, Bryson one, everybody. Appreciate you. Another day, Sam Hartman, everybody's favorite quarterback. All right, here we go.
And then we also have a big time injury update. Sam Fortier of the Washington Post, he has an article that basically summarizing everything that happened in practice, and one of the main parts was the injury report. He said Quinn said that he's thrilled with the health of the team right now, because we are just about as healthy as you can possibly be at this point in the offseason for an NFL franchise. This is like as healthy as it gets. This is best case scenario. He said 2 safeties, Derek Forrest and Percy Butler, did not participate in practice Thursday, but also did not appear to be injured, so nothing to worry about. They'll be great to go by training camp. Tight end Zach Ertz and wide receiver Jamison Crowder sat out Wednesday but returned to practice Thursday for the final practice, so we definitely don't have to worry about them. And then also the team held out defensive tackle Johnny Newton with his foot injury and defensive lineman FL Bada lower leg fracture all spring so far, but Quinn said that he was encouraged by both of their progresses. So just to let you know, it wasn't just Johnny Newton. It's been FL Bada that's been missing practices as well, so we finally got that official update. And then there's no mention of Frankie Louvu there, who had a very minor ankle injury that had him working in the bubble away from everybody else in Wednesday's practice on June 12th. But since there was no update about him and the fact that the injury was just so minor, I'm assuming that he's great to go. At the very least, he'll be 100% going into training camp, and that's all that matters. And honestly, I'm not saying that he will be, but I would not be surprised if Johnny Newton is even ready to go by the time we get to training camp. We'll see about FL Bada again. This is my first time ever hearing about the fact that he was hurt. I was wondering why I wasn't hearing anything about him at practice, but there's a lot of players that just have not gotten an update from the media members and reporters that go there. All eyes on Jayden Daniels and a lot of the more notable defensive players and offensive players, even the special teams guys with the kicking competition that we're going to talk about later on in this video. But as far as like a guy like FL Bada, I just thought maybe we haven't talked about him. I haven't seen a single John Ridgeway clip. I haven't heard anything about John Ridgeway. He's doing what he's supposed to do. He's doing a good job, and I just assumed maybe FL Bada was on the same track. But now we know, based on that update that came out earlier today, well, Thursday, June 13th, that FL Bada and Johnny Newton are the 2 guys that are dealing with actual serious injuries right now. And again, for you to only be dealing with those 2 is A1. I mean, that's great luck right there. We are lucky to be where we are right now, and I hope it continues not only into the regular season but throughout the regular season and also the postseason, because I'm speaking it into existence. I do not care. Now moving on to the coaches, let's talk about these coaches. First of all, Dan Quinn said that he was really happy with the work this offseason from the entire team, coaching staff, everybody, front office. He says that this is just the beginning though. And then Ken Norton also spoke to the team today as well. Dan Quinn was telling a story about Ken Newton addressing the team this morning before practice, talking about the Super Bowl teams and how much work they put in to get to that point, getting to the Super Bowl and things like that. But most importantly, let's note that he didn't talk about the titles that he won, but more so about the days between minicamp and training camp that got them there. Basically, the message was these next 6 weeks, make sure you do everything that you need to do to be prepared by the time we get to training camp, because you don't just suddenly reach Super Bowl. It starts early on in the offseason. It starts not only in mandatory minicamps, but this 6-week break you're about to go on, that matters too. You're not necessarily being tested, but we're expecting you to hold up your end of the deal. And I mean, that's the type of pedigree we have in this coaching staff. First of all, let's just talk about that. I mean, that guy right there is just our linebackers coach, not even the defensive coordinator or head coach. Like, there's so much valuable experience and such a winning culture infused all throughout this coaching staff. I'm so excited. And if anybody knows what it takes to win, it's several of the coaches in this coaching staff, most notably Ken Norton Jr., who had the players fired up even before we went into practice today. And then Zach Selby, on his official Commanders practice breakdown on the Commanders website, he said it's clear that the players have also bought into the new culture that Quinn has brought with him. From the team bag drills to the overall vibe or practice, it revolves around a collaborative effort from the players and coaches as they try to improve upon their 4-13 record from a year ago, even though that's not really anybody left here coaching staff wise. I believe there are only 2 of the same coaches here from last year, only probably like maybe 1 or 2 front office guys from last year, and then there's quite a few players, but it's still the most roster turnover going from 2023 season to the 2024 season out of the entire NFL. So saying that they have to improve upon their 4-13 season is kind of unfair for them, but this is the team that they're inheriting, so I understand. But continuing what Zach Selby said, with the players taking a break before coming back to prepare for the season, Quinn wanted to give a reminder of how important this time can be. That's why he had linebackers coach Ken Norton Jr., who was a part of 3 Super Bowl teams in his playing career, speak to them about the time between the end of minicamp and training camp. That little in-between is serious, man. That led to Quinn's second goal for his players. He wants them to do their part to stay ready during the time off. He wants his players to unwind a bit before embracing the grind that will be the 2024 season, especially that regular season. But that can't come to the detriment of all of the work that they have done over the last 2 months. Quote, when you do come back, you can be counted on, unquote, Quinn said, going back to his quote. That was the big message, and that's why I thought it was so important with Ken to say, man, protect this time like you're really putting it in. Other people want what you have, so keep going for it, unquote. And also, Zach Selby pointed out the fact that practice was pretty light today for the last day of work, but the team did go through some 11-on-11 drills for about like 30 minutes, just to give you the heads up before we dive into the practice. And then lastly, before we start to get to the practice, we're moving on to quarterback next. Of course, we're going to talk about Jayden Daniels, but we also have a pretty interesting update towards the end of the quarterbacks for some of the other quarterbacks as well, outside of Jayden Daniels, a really interesting quarterback competition that they held. But before we get there, lastly, and this is coming directly from Rico's Rag. Shouts out to Dean Jones over there on that website. He pointed out the fact that Andrew Wiley hails new energy within the Commanders facility. Remember, he was signed here as a 2023 free agent, so he was here all last year as your starting right tackle, so he would know the difference between 2023 Commanders and the 2024 Commanders up and down every way possible. The article says, things feel different where the Commanders are concerned. This was a sentiment echoed by veteran right tackle Andrew Wiley, who highlighted the increased energy in the building and players wanting to be around the facility as immense differences from his first season in the nation's capital based on comments via USA Today Sports. He said with them, quote, honestly, the locker room energy is great. Practice has been over for an hour and 15 minutes, and the locker room is still halfway filled. There's a lot of guys just still kicking it in there, including myself. No one is in a real rush to leave work, unquote. They love what's going on right now. People are having fun. I believe it was Cornelius Lucas, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, that said that this is like now the first time that he's excited waking up in the morning to go practice. He didn't feel that way the past few years since he's been here with the Commanders, and Andrew Wiley's basically pointing out the same thing. Even though he hasn't been here as long as Cornelius Lucas has, he could tell just from being here for 1 year last year and just early on into this offseason. We haven't even played a single regular season game yet, but the fact that people are hanging around an hour and 15 minutes after practice has already ended just because they just love the energy. They're just really vibing with everybody. Just literally, he said they're just kicking it. They're just in a locker room chilling. It's still half of the team there just cooling. A whole hour and 15 minutes after practice. And the article finishes up saying, this enhanced atmosphere is positive. From established stars such as Jonathan Allen to those trying to make their way like rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels, everyone credits Quinn for reestablishing a sense of belonging where once there was nothing but misery. I mean, again, Cornelius Lucas just said a couple of days ago that he dreaded going to work, going to practice every morning. He would just wake up and be like, basically, what's the point? Now this is the complete opposite. I really wanted to make sure I emphasize that to y'all. Now let's get to the quarterbacks, man. Most notably Jayden Daniels, of course, man. And as you can see on this clip on the screen that you see right now, you can tell that the Commanders quarterbacks are going to be throwing on the run a lot this year. Now, hopefully, Jayden Daniels is the only quarterback that ever has to play a single snap for us throughout the entire regular season. And hopefully, again, speaking into existence the postseason as well. But you can tell that Cliff Kingsbury is very serious about these quarterbacks practicing throwing on the run. Those same typical, like, target passes that they have to do, the accuracy drills, now they're starting to take it to another level to where, again, you're seeing on the screen, they're having to run and then deliver an accurate pass at the same time. Cliff Kingsbury is really trying to force that down and make sure they have that to muscle memory, basically. And then also, Dan Quinn did say that he's not ready to name a starting quarterback yet, but he says no doubt that Jayden Daniels has made some great progress. Dan Quinn said that the plan entering the spring was to give both Mariota and Daniels first team reps. Quinn said nothing has been determined about the starter, but they love the progress made by Daniels. Look good and he's on pace. And just to let you know, they were kind of flip-flopping back and forth with starting reps and voluntary OTAs. But mandatory mini camps, I believe Jayden Daniels took every starting rep with the ones against the first team defense, with the first team offense and all that type of stuff. So maybe that's a sign right there. But also, Dan Quinn said that Jayden has a good handle on what they're teaching him, but also possesses humility and knows he has a lot to prove. So he's like a perfect combination. He also goes on to say that Jayden Daniels has both the confidence to play the right way, but also the humility needed for a younger player. And he also said, quote, that is really rare, unquote. So he loves where Jayden Daniels is at right now. Everybody's surprised. I even heard somewhere that Dan Quinn said that he's even surprised by how great Jayden Daniels is. And he was one of the guys that was really fighting for the Commanders to draft Jayden Daniels second overall. And even at this point, he's like, wow, this guy's even beyond what I thought he would be. So everybody's very optimistic. And so I just really want to point out the fact that we all know that Jayden Daniels is the starter already. I'm not exactly sure why he has yet to even name him the starter yet. I think there's like this element of they want to have some sort of like a quarterback competition, like kind of like a fake one going into training camp, so it can seem like he earned it instead of being given it. And we're going to discuss the quote that he had on that a little later, really soon actually. But honestly, man, I think it's very obvious. I'm not even necessarily waiting on him to announce Jayden Daniels as a starter, because he already is. First of all, you don't draft a quarterback second overall not to start him week one. That's just insane. But then on top of that, not only is Jayden Daniels looking like he is the better quarterback already, and it's only mandatory minicamps, which is wild, but he's also been getting all of the starting snaps the entire 3-day mandatory minicamp week that we just had. But Dan Quinn also said that he's not declaring a starting quarterback yet, but says that no doubt Jayden Daniels has made great progress, like we said earlier. He said there will be a competition in camp, training camp, but expect Jayden to continue getting the first team work and eventually be named quarterback one. So it's on the way. It's just only a matter of time. Quinn also said that the team set up the reps that way because it's a true competition, and that he would not make any great declarations on the starter just yet. But he also said Daniels earned the starting reps because he's been making unbelievable progress. So again, even he's surprised by how far ahead Jayden Daniels is in his development compared to what they expected when they took him. So Right now, the reason that he even got the starting reps, that he basically just got a mandatory mini camps for the past 3 days, was because of how much progress he's made and the fact that he's exceeded expectations. But we'll see how much that actually plays into things as we move forward. And then also, before we leave this part and start talking about what Jayden Daniels did in practice today, Zach Selby pointed out, we'll end the minicamp series with some positive updates on Daniels' development, which will be the story of the Commanders 2024 season, of course. All evaluations this time of year should be taken with context, but it's difficult to not get excited about how Jayden Daniels will help the Commanders. Quinn said Daniels has a rare blend of confidence and humility, like we spoke about earlier. He executes the offense well and does a good job of communicating the play to his teammates. He hasn't been named the starter yet, but there has been unbelievable progress, like we just spoke about, from him in terms of leadership and growth. To Quinn, that means it will be a really fun camp in August. I cannot wait. Now let's talk about Jayden Daniels in practice today. And Scott Abraham pointed out something interesting. He tweeted, "Commanders fans, as you're seeing on your screen right now, here is your rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels at practice today. This will be the last time for the next 6 weeks that you will see Jayden Daniels throwing the football while wearing the burgundy and gold. I hope the enjoyment you get from this video lasts a long time. I'm telling y'all better soak it up, because again, we have 6 weeks until July 29th before we see anything like this again. So, hey man, if you got to come back and watch this video over and over again, I do not blame you. But also, shouts out to Lake Lewis for tweeting this. It has been a successful 3-day mini camp for rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels. He's really put his claim in to becoming QB1 entering training camp. So a lot of the people that are there at the practices are saying that Jayden Daniels is killing it right now. Zach Selby even tweeted during the practice, the Commanders were going through red zone drills with Jayden Daniels working with the ones. From the 5-yard line, Daniels threw a dart to McLaurin for a touchdown, which takes me to my next point about how much the chemistry has grown between Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. We're going to dive deeper into that when we get to the wide receiver section of this video, but I just wanted to give you the heads up early until we get there. Just wait on it. We're going to dive into it. The Terry McLaurin connection from Jayden Daniels is getting stronger and stronger. I can't wait to see it in training camp. Can't wait to see it in the preseason, and most notably, see it in the regular season again. We're going to talk about it soon. But also, Jayden Daniels threw a touchdown to B-Rob at one point. He dropped it into a bucket over a few defenders' heads at one point. And then there was also a back-to-back moment where Jayden Daniels and Brian Robinson, they were on a roll. Daniels found Robinson in the seam for touchdowns on back-to-back throws during 11-on-11s. He had a back shoulder on both of them. Like, both throws, back-to-back plays were to Brian Robinson, back shoulder throws, big plays, both touchdowns as well. And then shouts out to Rhiannon Walker for pointing out the fact that the sound crew immediately played Shoulder Lean as to basically celebrate the back shoulder touchdowns. Well played, Commanders. Well played. I mean, first of all, that's another Atlanta classic, so y'all know I'm a big fan of that. But nah, that's fine for real though, because that has to make practice more fun for these guys when the DJ is playing things that directly reflect what's going on in practice. That would for sure make me practice even harder than I already was. Like, I'd be dancing to the song that I caused and everything. Like, I'm catching a back shoulder fade, or I'm the one that threw the back shoulder fade. I'm definitely doing the shoulder lean dance and all of that while I'm celebrating, while the music is playing. But this is not about me nor the DJ. Most importantly, the most important thing here is that Jayden Daniels was cooking today in practice, and also the chemistry between him and Brian Robinson is growing, most notably down the field. I mean, 4 verts, the DBs and linebackers are all worried about the wide receivers running deep, and then you just have Brian Robinson sneaking underneath for touchdowns. That's going to be a very diddly play call for Cliff Kingsbury. I can't wait. The fact that the connection is already there makes it just virtually unfair. And then going back to Zach Selby talking about Jayden Daniels, he said, as has been the case for the past 2 days, Daniels took the starting reps during team drills with Marcus Mariota backing him up. Quinn said that that was by design, as the team wanted to give both quarterbacks some starting reps. We're still months away from a decision being made at quarterback, but Daniels has improved each day. His most impressive throws of the day went to Brian Robinson, both resulting in touchdowns. Again, that chemistry is growing. Then you also have this clip of Jayden Daniels throwing a nice ball to Zach Ertz, and then he also had a nice throw to Armani Rogers. So he was practicing with the tight ends for a little bit in practice, as you can see on your screen right now. And hey, man, y'all already know me, man. Any mention of Armani Rogers, I'm excited. I'm gonna need more Jayden Daniels to Armani Rogers all off season. I'm gonna need that connection to build as well. We already got the Brian Robinson one building. We're about to talk about the Jahan Dotson one soon in this video. We're definitely gonna talk about the Terry McLaurin one growing as well. I'm gonna need that Armani Rogers one locked in too, man. Y'all already know I'm rooting for the Armani Rogers potential big time. I think his ceiling is unlimited. I think he has all pro player potential. We just gotta realize it. We gotta develop it. We gotta hone it in, and him and Jayden Daniels gotta get that connection going. So I love the fact that I'm seeing those clips of Jayden Daniels throwing him the ball. Let's get that. Let's start cooking that up. And also, I'm seeing that Jayden Daniels is growing a great connection with Jahan Dotson as well, as you can see on the screen right now. And that's been a pretty unstoppable connection so far this offseason. I've been hearing left and right about Jayden Daniels and Jahan Dotson, first down, touchdown, whatever. And I can't wait to see it again grow in training camp, and also how they do it on Sundays. I just can't wait. I feel like the connection he's building with all of these receivers and running backs gonna be unfair. And before we leave the quarterback section of this video, the Washington Commanders quarterbacks and their assistant quarterbacks coach had fun with a little challenge today during practice. And as you can see on the screen right now, you had Sam Hartman throw the first ball. He made it. Then you have Marcus Mariota. He missed. Jayden Daniels, unfortunately, missed, but there's no quarterback controversy. Don't start saying Sam Hartman QB1 just because he was able to make it in this little quick competition they had towards the end of practice. But shockingly enough, and I love this, assistant quarterbacks coach David Blau ended up making his as well. So he was out there showing up his own players that he's coaching. I absolutely love that, man. The energy behind it and everything. I love the fact that we're doing so many fun things like this. Like, I believe it was John Com that also even broke down the fact that the defensive line even has like a little competitive thing that they do with like the sled where they versus each other, and then they just do random matchups of Jonathan Allen versus Jamin Davis or KJ Henry versus Deron, like just random matchups. And then of course there's a lot of trash talking behind it. Like John Com even pointed out the fact that when KJ Henry beat Jamin Davis one time, and I believe Jamin Davis beat somebody bigger, like strong, like Dorrance Armstrong, you think it was, but then when he went against KJ Henry won, and he basically said something to the extent of like, I don't remember the exact wording, but he said like, somebody, I better not never lose to a safety. I mean, of course Jamin Davis is not a safety, but that's just the trash talking that's going on. That's the competitive nature. That's just encouraging them to give it more of their all, even more than they already were. I love how we're doing like small little mini competitions amongst the different position groups there. I love the ones I'm seeing for the quarterbacks and the defensive line. I'm hoping other position groups are doing something similar. We're also having kicker tryouts right now, so that's healthy competition as well. We'll get to that towards the end of the video when we get to the special teams. Now moving on to the running backs, going back to Sam Fortier of the Washington Post, he pointed out the fact, and this is a tight end and a running back, but I wanted to just go ahead and discuss them both at the same time because they kind of intertwine while he's talking in his article. He said, two under the radar players who had decent springs, undrafted rookie tight end Colson Yonkov, that's the tight end, and journeyman running back Jeremy McNichols, who we signed to free agency. Both contribute on special teams, which could help them land on the right side of the roster bubble right now, because those are both guys that honestly, on the outside looking in, coming into this offseason, especially from my point of view, I just didn't really give either of those guys a great chance of making the roster, especially Colson Yonkov, but right now they're making plays. He goes on to say Yonkov, a former top quarterback recruit coming out of high school, plays some running back, plays some special teams at UCLA. If he shows promise on offense, he could be a versatile blocker in the same vein as rookie tight end Ben Sinnott, where he's kind of like a fullback as well, so he has a lot of versatility there. And then, most notably, the reason I'm talking about this in the running back section, Jeremy McNichols, who I do need to point out is 28. This is not just some high ceiling waiting to find deeper potential, just, waiting for the right opportunity, but maybe he is. I don't know. But he's 28 years old. It's not like this is just an undrafted free agent we just bought in recently within the past 2 years. This guy has bounced from team to team. He's actually, Sam 48 points out the fact that he's on his 10th NFL team already and hasn't had an NFL carry since 2021, but he's been a key part of the team's 2 back sets this spring and has performed well. I also want to point out the thing that Sam 48 said. We're running a lot of 2 running back sets right now in the backfield, so I'm very excited about that. Just keep that in mind. Brian Robinson gave you the heads up weeks ago that we're going to run a lot of no huddle. And Austin Eckler said yesterday that he's going to be using a variety of ways. He's going to be like a Swiss Army knife. And now you're also hearing from Sam 48 that we're going to have some 2 running back sets. So this is going to be a very, very creative and interesting offense that I can't wait. I mean, again, Brian Robinson catching long 40-plus yard touchdowns from Jayden Daniels and back-to-back plays today is insane. So these running backs, you may want to pick up at least one of them in fantasy football, but also most notably Jeremy McNichols, a guy that we just signed as a free agent that a lot of people probably even forgot that we signed by now, is making plays and may have a chance to make this 53-man roster as that 3rd, maybe 4th running back. We'll see. Now moving on to the wide receivers. Again, going back to what I spoke on earlier, giving you the foreshadowing for what we're going to talk about now is that play when they were going through red zone drills. Jayden Daniels working with the ones, of course, against the ones from the 5-yard line, threw a dart to Terry McLaurin for a touchdown. And to break down exactly what happened there, again, from Sam 48 himself, he said in one of the final plays of this week's minicamp, there was a glimmer of a strong connection between 2 of the Washington Commanders' most important players, Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. The offense was deep in the red zone, and just as the wide receiver cut inside on a slant route, he looked back towards the quarterback and saw a perfectly thrown ball waiting for him, low where only he could catch it and just ahead of him. McLaurin snared the ball and fell into the end zone for the touchdown. There had been other moments of synchronicity in camp, but this one seemed to mean a little more to McLaurin. And the 28-year-old wideout, same age as Jeremy McNichols for reference, popped out yelling and beaming, seemingly fired up by the anticipation and ball placement by Jayden Daniels, and he ran over and slapped Jayden's helmet basically in celebration, like good job, man, like good ball type of thing. So Jayden Daniels is already winning over guys like Terry McLaurin with his ability to throw the ball exactly where it needs to be and consistently, and that's providing hope for guys like Terry McLaurin to where he kind of feels like maybe I finally have found a franchise quarterback. Maybe I finally have a quarterback that can be one of the top guys in the NFL, that can really feature myself and put me in the statistical categories that are going to get me to the Hall of Fame and things like that. That just has to be where his mind goes. That's where my mind would go personally, but who knows? Also, moving on, speaking of wide receivers, Davion Davis had another great play today. He made a crazy catch, a diving touchdown catch from a pass from Marcus Mariota. Zach Selby described it as several players caught touchdowns today, including Austin Eckler, Bryson Tremaine, and Terry McLaurin. I feel like we shouldn't just skip over that. I mean, people were balling out there, and Bryson Tremaine is our tallest receiver by far. I think you have Luke McCaffrey, he's 6'2". Bryson Tremaine is 6'5". That's it. It's Bryson Tremaine, Luke McCaffrey, everybody else in height. So there's a considerable gap of a whole 3 inches of height between Luke McCaffrey and Bryson Tremaine. He's the tallest receiver by that much, unless you want to throw in the tight ends as well. But just purely receiver-wise, the fact that he's making plays is significant because maybe he finds a way onto this roster just because of having that niche of being the only true big receiver that we have right now. But Zach Selby goes on to say that the best came from Davion Davis, who kept both feet in bounds despite having 2 defenders around him. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, man, that's another day of Davion Davis making plays. He walked into this offseason very far down the depth chart, not gonna lie. But now, I don't know, not jumping to conclusions, but he's been making plays and standing out, and that's all he can do to increase his chances of potentially making this roster. He's taking full advantage of it. And again, earlier, we already talked about Kosin Yankov earlier, and it seems like now we've talked about him every single day of mandatory mini camps now, from day 1 on Tuesday to day 2 on Wednesday and day 3 on Thursday. We have talked about Kosin Yankov every single day. He definitely started off this offseason on the outside looking in, just like Jeremy McNichols, you can argue, just like Davion Davis, who we just talked about at wide receiver, and he more than likely still is right now. But he's definitely being noticed by the coaching staff with all of the plays that he's been making, and he's doing everything that he can so far to increase his chances of making this 53-man roster. He's doing everything right that you can possibly do right now. We'll see how much it matters by the time we break this roster down to 53. We'll see if he shows out in preseason, if he continues to show out in training camp, but that's just a name to keep in your back pocket. Davion Davis at wide receiver, Kosin Yankov at tight end, maybe even Jeremy McNichols at running back, even though he's more of a veteran. Davion Davis and Kosin Yankov are younger players, Jeremy McNichols, 28 years old, again, same age as Terry McLaurin, but a guy on the outside looking in, making some noise right now in training camp, well, in mandatory mini camp before we head to training camp. Just 3 names to keep an eye on. Just keep your ears out for those guys if you just continue to hear their names going into training camp. Now moving on to the offensive line, as you can see on the screen right now with them just going through drills and things like that. Scott Abraham tweeted with this video, in my opinion, the Commanders' offensive line is one of the biggest question marks going into this new season. I completely agree. It's so important to protect the rookie quarterback and allow him to feel comfortable. Completely agree. And then you have Tyler Biadasz, Cosme, and Lucas doing some of the reps in these clips. But to be completely honest, in my personal opinion, as Rico of Street Scores, I love the interior offensive line. That's not a problem at all. The only questions I have are the 2 tackles right now, because again, I feel like Samuel Cosme, like I've already done a whole video breaking it down just a few days ago. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Literally did a full breakdown with stats and everything as to how Samuel Cosme is literally the best player on the entire team. I'm talking including everybody. He's our player that's most likely to make an all-pro the soonest. I completely believe that. Then Tyler Biadasz, who we signed as a veteran center, is arguably a top 10 center in the NFL right now. I'm not worried about the interior offensive line at all. I mean, you have Chris Paul off the bench, and I think he's pretty decent with a high ceiling. But then on the outside, you have Andrew Wiley at right tackle, and at this point, we're just hoping that he doesn't look like the first half of 2023 rather than the second half of 2023. If he looks like the second half of 2023, okay, he's decent. He's like an average starter at right tackle. We can live with that. And then we still don't even know who our starting left tackle is right now. And with rookie franchise quarterback Jayden Daniels' life at stake, that's a worry. I mean, that's his blind spot. We really got to figure that one out. So I'm with Scott Abraham there. That's one of the biggest question marks and definitely one of the biggest worries before we head into training camp. Now moving on to the defensive line, and just to let you know, let's go ahead and get this out the way. From now on, unless something changes when we get to training camp in 6 weeks, I will be including Jamin Davis in the defensive line part of these breakdowns instead of the linebackers. It's that serious. It's time. Michael Phillips, who has been at every practice possible for the Commanders so far, said, quote, "This is not a drill anymore. This is not a fun one-off. Jamin Davis was a defensive end in practice, and that's one practice, one time on June 11th, but it looks pretty much like that's his role at the moment," unquote. So this is from the practice Tuesday a few days ago, just to give you the heads up. But again, Michael Phillips, who was one of the Commanders reporters, one of the media members, beat writers that has gone to every practice, said that Jamin Davis is literally just being a defensive end. That's it, an edge rusher, that's it. And I feel like this is not only a thing that shows how much progress and potential he's shown in his transition from off-ball linebacker to edge rusher, but also, most importantly, it shows how deep this linebacker group is just within just one offseason, to where our best 2023 off-ball linebacker is now an edge rusher, and we don't even necessarily miss him that much, because if our linebacker group did not have Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and Jordan McGee, who we just drafted, even if edge rusher was Jamin Davis's most natural position, the position that he can go out there and be the most productive with, we would probably still force him to be an off-ball linebacker just out of necessity. We just need linebackers. So it shows that not only does Jamin Davis have some potential to be an edge rusher, but it also shows that, hey man, we don't really need him at off-ball linebacker because we have so many other great ones, which is just the biggest improvement in the entire offseason for this entire team. I'm very excited about Jayden Daniels moving forward, but no position group on this team improved more than the linebacker group. Point blank period. That's insane. And I'm pretty sure Jamin Davis may even do a little bit of off-ball linebacker stuff occasionally, but right now he's a true edge rusher as it looks. We'll see if things change in training camp. Maybe this is just a permanent experiment for mandatory minicamp only. This is a mandatory minicamp everyday thing. We'll see if it goes into training camp. We'll see if it bleeds into training camp. We'll see. Now, moving on to linebacker, because again, we're not even talking about Jamin Davis anymore. Apparently, safety Jeremy Chin, safety Quan Martin, and linebacker Frankie Louvu were the 3 names that jumped out to Quinn when asked which players stood out as versatile defenders this spring. And I know there's 2 safeties in there and only 1 linebacker, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about this in the linebacker part because Dan Quinn had a really interesting thing to say about Frankie Louvu. Now, what he said exactly, quote, I would say some of what I was hoping to see I did. Maybe that's with safety Jeremy Chin. I would say it's been good to see safety Quan Martin. Some down in the box, but some in the middle of the field safety play as well. But linebacker Frankie Louvu, although I knew that was part of his game to be very versatile, I'd say it was probably even stronger than I thought. So those would be some, that jump out to me. And then on the offensive side, we've worked, with some of the receivers who can move into the backfield and vice versa. Like we've been saying, Luke McCaffrey, they're trying to turn him into a Christian McCaffrey clone. That's his brother. So yeah, it's an ongoing process, but sometimes you just try it to take a look and not. Same thing with the kick returners. But again, he was asked which versatile players in different spots who stood out in their expanded roles and things like that. He went out of his way to name Jeremy Chin, Quan Martin, and Frankie Louvu, and he even said that he was aware that Frankie Louvu was a very versatile player when they signed him as a free agent, but they didn't expect it to be this ridiculous, for him to be this good at it. And so now continuing to the defensive backs, where you talked about Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin. Y'all already know Quan Martin is my favorite safety my favorite defensive back period returning from the 2023 Commanders. But overall, out of the entire DB group, Jeremy Chin is my favorite player and the guy that I'm most excited about. So I'm happy to hear that those two are really standing out, especially for their versatility. That sounds like those are your two starting safeties, but we'll see what type of role they're in. Like if Jeremy Chin steps into the box, Quan Martin's a strong safety or free safety. Who knows? Derek Forrest can maybe get some time with them. Percy Butler can be out there. I've heard plays where like Percy Butler speed really made a difference. There was like one play I heard earlier that I think it was the John Kahn podcast that pointed out that Jayden Daniels scrambled for 10 yards. Maybe in college that would have been like 20, 30, 40 yards, but Percy Butler's speed is different than the speed that Jayden Daniels was dealing with in college, and his speed caused that run, that scramble to only be 10 yards. Still a great positive play from Jayden Daniels, but Percy Butler also showing his speed right there. So this safety group, like I've already said for several videos now, is arguably the deepest position group on the entire team with the most talent from top to bottom. I'm so excited, and the fact that Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin are looking that good, but there's also just so much talent behind them, and Derek Forrest and Percy Butler, I just don't know how you keep those guys off the field as well. And then Mike Sanverstil is your starting slot, and it's just going to be hard to play three safeties when you also want to play Mike Sanverstil at least 70% of the snaps. So our DB group is very deep. We still have something a little bit to worry about as far as outside corners, but everybody else is looking fine. But then you have Tariq Castro-Fields. Speaking of outside corners, maybe you see him more as a slot corner, whatever, but he nearly had an interception today on a pass from Jeff Driscoll. Now granted, it's with the backups against the backups, but Jeff Driscoll was targeting Dax Milne near the right sideline, and Tariq Castro-Fields read the play perfectly, but just couldn't get his hands around it. So Joe Witt Jr. is going to get on him for not catching that interception, but at the same time, the fact that Tariq Castro-Fields with his already elite speed, it's always been the speed is there, the athleticism is there. Can he figure it out mentally? The fact that he's starting to read plays perfectly, read quarterbacks, and have the confidence to go jump on the ball and make plays. Hey, man, don't sleep on Tariq Castro-Fields as well, man. Definitely a scary playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. Just got to learn to catch those interceptions if you want to play for this Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn defense that has led the NFL in takeovers in takeaways for the past 3 years in a row. Now moving on to special teams. Shouts out to the kicker competition that we're having right now, coming from the Sam 48 article. He said Ramiz Ahmed won the last day of the kicker competition. He made all 4 of his kicks from roughly 30 to roughly 50 yards, even with the team crowded around and trying to distract them. I love the fact that we're putting the elements on them. This is not just, it's going to be a peaceful, quiet, make a kick situation on Sundays. So we need to try to simulate as much stress and pressure and noise as we possibly can in practice. I'm glad that they're doing that. And it's interesting that Ramiz Ahmed, even though he was Chris Blewett's backup in the UFL so far, has actually been impressing a lot in the few days that he's been here practicing with us. Then you have Lucas Havrizik, who's probably like his direct competition as of right now. On the other hand, followed up his perfect Wednesday. You could argue he had the better Wednesday between the two. Perfect, literally. But then today as in Thursday, June 13th, the final day of mandatory minicamps, he missed 2 of his 4 attempts. He hooked the 33-yarder wide left, terrible. That's unacceptable. And then doinked the left goalpost from about 50 yards. That's unacceptable. One of his intermediate attempts appeared to just sneak inside the left upright as well. That's not good at all. He's probably gone. Now, continuing with the article, Sam 48 says, now the question is to who will compete with Ahmed come training camp. The options include Havrisek, who spent part of last season with the Los Angeles Rams, and then most notably Jake Bates of the UFL League, and maybe some other free agents that may be available. We've brought in several names the past few days, but it seems like Ahmed and Havrasik are the 2 finalists, and it already seems like Havrasik is already falling off, and it's just Ahmed left. Hopefully we bring in Jake Bates. Just to give you the exact kicks, Ramiz Ahmed made his 33-yarder, 42-yarder, 48-yarder, and 53-yarder. The Havrasik missed 33, made from 42, made from 48, and then hit the goalpost on 53. And again, one of those 40-yard kicks, 42 or 48, barely snuck in as well. So I want to point that out too. And again, since Ahmed is the only kicker officially signed to this team as well, because Havrasik is not signed to the team, he's just coming in for trials basically, you can already bet that he's going to be there for training camp, because as of right now, he's winning the competition on top of being the only kicker actually signed to the team. So again, the question is, the only thing really at this point is who will compete against him for the starting kicker spot once we get into training camp. As of right now, again, Ahmed has the lead, but I doubt that lasts long at all. I hope it doesn't last long. I hope we bring in somebody that can outdo him, because again, he was once Chris Blewett's backup, and even though he's been balling out so far in mandatory mini camps, I just don't know how much faith I can put into that guy just yet. But who knows? We'll see. At this point, I really just hope we go and sign Jake Bates before training camp, really as soon as possible, because several teams already reportedly have interest in him. And after June 16th, when he legally becomes available, because the UFL season officially ends, because as of right now, he legally, like literally cannot even talk to NFL teams right now, but it's already been reported that several NFL teams, including us, have sent in a request to potentially talk to him after he gets out and is free of the UFL contract that he's in as of June 16th. So we may need to go ahead and sign him before we even get a chance to see him kick in person at this point, before we even get to training camp, because I highly doubt he'll be available as like a free agent by July 29th. Highly doubt it. There's too many teams interested. We may have to carry 2 kickers on roster at the same time, which that's not as crazy as it may sound, because several teams in the NFL are doing it right now. I believe there's like 8 to 12 different teams right now in the NFL with more than 1 kicker. There's like 2 or 3 that even have 3 kickers. So if we need to sign Jake Bates and just hold him until we can actually see him kick in person with just good faith that he is going to be better than Ramiz Ahmed, then just go ahead and do that, in my personal opinion. But we'll see. Now, lastly, before we get up out of here, we have a few updates that really don't have anything to do with the Commanders, but I'm pretty sure y'all would like to hear some of these. First of all, the Saints have a lot of players holding out right now in mandatory mini camps. Not looking good, right? I mean, we've had full 100% participation even in voluntary OTAs, let alone mandatory mini camps when you're supposed to be there, and if you're not there, I believe you even get fined. But the Saints have like double-digit players not showing up to practice right now, including Chase Young, who also did not show up to mandatory minicamp practices for the Commanders, so we're not surprised. Also, before we get up out of here, I know y'all saw Trevor Lawrence get that huge deal where it's worth $275 million over 5 years with $200 million guaranteed. Now you're hearing about Dak Prescott wanting to be the highest paid quarterback in the league, and please, you know how great that would be for the Commanders, for really everybody in the division, really everybody in football outside of the Cowboys. They would be in cap space hell. They already are in a terrible cap space situation, but Dak Prescott right now is looking to set an NFL record for $6 million a year in his deal, the most money an NFL player has ever made in NFL history. Please, Cowboys, please go and do that. Dak Prescott, don't throw another pass for them until they do that, as a matter of fact. And I feel like that's a win-win for all of us outside of the Dallas Cowboys, because that means either the Cowboys are bad because they don't have Dak Prescott as their starting quarterback because he's holding out, or he's their starting quarterback but he's eating up so much cap space they can't sign any other good players. Please, either way, this looks like this is headed in a great direction for us. Now we just got to figure out how to get the Eagles to get in the worst cap space situation, and it could be our moment to strike within the next 2-3 years, I'm telling y'all. And again, before we dip up out of here, just to remind y'all, we're not getting another Commanders practice until July 29th. Just wanted to remind y'all that at the very end of the video. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure y'all stay tuned, because again, even though this is the final Commanders practice or any real major news update that we're gonna get for a very long time, just to remind y'all, I have y'all covered. I have so many video ideas, so much content loaded up. Again, my computer is moving slow with all of the tabs and windows I have ready for y'all for different video ideas that I definitely easily have enough content to do at least one video, minimum a video a day leading up until July 29th once we have training camp. And of course, I'm gonna have y'all covered with that, just like I did with the mandatory mini camps and voluntary OTAs. Whenever the media actually did have access to the practices, any practice that the media or the fans, anybody gets to see or know what happens, I have y'all covered just like this, where we're doing position group by position group breakdowns. I'll include the clips and everything. So make sure y'all please stay tuned for all of that. I really appreciate y'all. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video, especially the most notable topics about the underrated players on the outside looking in that are making plays. How about the connection between Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, Brian Robinson, and Jahan Dotson growing? How excited that has you about the potential of this team? Also, the injury update that I gave you, the fact that Jamin Davis is now basically a full-blown edge rusher, and Dan Quinn pointing out the 3 players that he's very excited about in Jeremy Chin, Quan Martin, and Frankie Louvu. Let me know how you feel about all of that in the comment section. I'm gonna try my best again to read and reply to as many comments as possible. I've been super busy though these past few days. I'm gonna be pretty busy moving on as well, just to give y'all the heads up, but I'm gonna try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. That's why I'm coming out with this video so late. So just know, no matter what, I'm working to get y'all a video no matter what, at least one a day. So make sure y'all stay tuned. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like on the way out. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.